Hello. Hi guys. If anyone's online, let me know. One of you seems to be online already. Let me know if the audio etc. is coming fine. And today we continue our discussion of the Arthashastra. And for those who want to check out what all went on in the introductory sections of the book and the beginnings etc., you all will have to check out the playlist called Arthashastra in my channel. I've done countless videos on it, and I've done one live stream which ended in the chapter called The State and its Constituent Elements. And today we start from Calamities of the Population. So I'll wait a bit to check out if there are people joining already. So in the last day's live stream on Arthashastra, I did start this chapter called Calamities of the Population to discuss what are the calamities that might befall the people of Chanakya's land, or whoever the king is who is treating the Arthashastra as his constitution or his basically operation manual. Those citizens, whatever calamities fall on them, and how to cope with them, and who to save and in which priority. That is what is discussed here in this Calamities of the Population. And especially the previous chapter called The State and its Constituent Assembly is especially my favorite. If you want to check that out, you all will have to go to my playlist called Arthashastra and check out the last day's live stream on this topic. And today we start Calamities of the Population again, because we had done 1 or 2 pages of it just, and it will need some amount of recap. Hi Shravya, hi Rohan, hi Abhay. পিছনে কে বসে আছেন? পিছনে বসে আছে আমার বন্ধু শায়ক। पीछे मेरा दोस्त शायक पॉल बैठा है, जो कि ये वो AI इंजीनियर है जिसको मैंने इंटरव्यू किया था 2 एपिसोड्स में. शायक से हाई. Okay, so let's start, guys. Remember, we still haven't entered the parts where we are reading exactly something written by Chanakya. We are still quoting Chanakya here and there, and this is mainly the translator, Mr. L.N. Rangarajan. He is doing some explaining and premise setting and gist. That we are still in that phase. So he'll be explaining a lot, Mr. L.N. Rangarajan. We are still going to be reading a lot from his mouth, basically. So a variety of calamities can afflict the population of a state, most of them living in the countryside, outside the fortified towns, that is the Nagara. The sufferings of the people could be due to acts of God or men. Acts of God are mentioned in this text in a variety of chapters later. Of these, 4.3, chapter 4.3, which we'll come to later, that has the most extensive treatment. And calamities brought about by men are more numerous. The army, whether it's his own army or the enemy's army, or those near the king, such as his favorite wife or a mistress or a prince, the army and those near the king can harass the population. There may be civil strife. All these are calamities. Or among the members of the royal family, like it happened in Nepal in the year 2000. One prince killed off the entire family. The king and the people may become lax, giving themselves over to pleasure, like what used to happen in the later Mughal kings, right? All of them were all day gambling, drinking, and womanizing. There may be marauding, fighting units, or oppression by chiefs, high-ranking ministers, and custom officials. That seems like pre-1991 India. Traders may make exorbitant profits at the cost of the people. This sounds like USA's pharmaceutical industry. Common lands may be seized by nobles. This is like any socialist government in the world. Highway robbers, seems like Pakistan as well. Highway robbers and jungle tribes may harass the population. This sounds like West Bengal police. Any of these affects the welfare and contentment of the people, and thereby weakens the nation. All these calamities. In line with his habit of exhausting all possibilities of a subject, Kautilya also adds his advice on 2 topics: the effect of calamities on common people and on chiefs, and the target population for relief works and the priorities. Okay, let me take out the headphone. It's useless. If the audio doesn't come properly, let me know. Okay, there's a question about Shayok. AFN, He's asking AI engineer. So he's an MLE, yes. Machine learning engineer, yes. Please ask him what tools he uses. I'm curious. Shayok, what tools do you use?
I use PyTorch. I use TensorFlow.
PyTorch, TensorFlow.
I code in Python.
I code in Python. He codes in Python.
Specifically, I use the VS Code editor.
Specifically, he uses the VS Code editor.
And for running my stuff, I use Google Cloud Platform.
And for running his clock, he
Stuff.
running his stuff. He uses Google Cloud Platform.
Google Cloud.
Google Cloud Platform. Okay, let's read the comments. Abhay says, when will our government start following Chanakya Niti? When they hear the book called Arthashastra, they don't know about it. By which government? I mean, Modi or Mamata Banerjee? চলে গেলে না এসে গেছে মনে হয় Yeah, is the audio coming now? Today actually internet was gone. Excellent connection দেখাচ্ছে. Yeah, na. Today's problem was different. Today actually my Wi-Fi went off, and yesterday it was a USB problem. Okay, let me know if the stream is fine now. Okay. The Wi-Fi was disconnected for a while. Okay. West Bengal police নিয়ে কি হয়েছে? না West Bengal police নিয়ে কিছু হয়নি. Okay, let's start. So first calamity section, first classification of calamities is called acts of God. Now, calamities due to acts of God are floods, fire, diseases and epidemics, and famine. Other calamities of divine origin are rats, wild animals, snakes, and evil spirits. It is the duty of the king to protect the people from all these calamities. This is a quote from Chanakya. Now we are going to read some quote after quote by Chanakya on these topics, okay? Now Chanakya says, whenever danger threatens, the king shall protect all those afflicted like a father protects his children, and shall organize continuous day and night prayers with oblations. Yagya Vyagya Hoga. All such calamities can be overcome by propitiating gods and Brahmins. When there is drought or excessive rain or visitations of evil, the prescribed, the rites prescribed, the rituals prescribed in the Atharva Veda, and those recommended by ascetics, that is sadhus, etc., those recommended by ascetics shall be performed. Therefore, experts in occult practices, that is tantra, and holy ascetics shall be honored and thus encouraged to stay in the country so that they can counteract the calamities of divine origin. These are quotes from Chanakya. Worship with offerings, oblations, and recitals of benediction, that is all the mantras from Rig Veda, all the Vedas. Recitals of benediction shall be organized on full moon and new moon days against different calamities as follows. तो एक particular calamity के लिए किस देवता को पूजा करना है वो भी क्लासिफिकेशन है. वहाँ एक टेबल दिया हुआ है यहाँ पे. तो फायर के लिए जब आग वाग लगेगा तो वर्शिप ऑफर्ड टू अग्नि ऑब्वियसली. कैलामिटी अगर फ्लड है तो वर्शिप विल बी ऑफर्ड टू रिवर्स. कैलामिटी अगर रैट्स है तो रैट्स के भी देवता है हमारे. कैलामिटी वाइल्ड एनिमल्स का है तो वर्शिप विल बी ऑफर्ड टू माउंटेन्स. कैलामिटी स्नेक्स का हो तो वर्शिप ऑफर्ड टू नागा, ऑब्वियसली द कोबरा डिविनिटी. कैलामिटी अगर इवल स्पिरिट्स का है तो वर्शिप विल बी ऑफर्ड टू चैत्याज. ऑफरिंग्स मेड टू चैत्याज may include umbrellas, food, small flags, and goat meat. Okay. Let's bring an Ambedkarite here. बहुत जलेगी. Okay, Afin says one more question. Ask him why Google AI platform, any reason particular, like official, because Amazon ML and SageMaker is better according to me. Just personal preference, Naki.
According to me, GCP is better.
Okay, according to him, GCP is better. Abhay Agarwal says Devta Vigyan. Okay. So now we go on to what happens when fires occur. Villagers shall do their cooking during the summer months outside the houses. They shall always have the 10 firefighting implements. Now we are going to read a quote from Chanakya. The responsibilities of the municipal administration and the citizens for preventing outbreaks of fire in the more crowded cities are given in detail in later chapters. Civic responsibility and municipal regulations, that's the chapter name. The verses also include a set of punishments. We'll get to that also later. Also, an acts of God deal with occult remedies, tantra remedies, for warding off dangers to the royal palace from fire, snakes and poison. तो snakes भी आ जा सकता था palace में, because see one thing that this was one of the better arguments and conclusions ever made by Abhijit Chavra. I think that some guy had asked him that where are the palaces of Chandragupta Maurya? Where are the palaces of our greatest kings? So he had said that our kings always lived the kind of palaces we are used to seeing in Western countries or even in films like Bahubali. Those kinds of palaces actually didn't exist for our kings. Okay, our kings lived with not so much flamboyance as shown in movies, and I'll tell you why. Why I think Abhijit Chavra is correct here, because you see, so many temples have survived which are more than 1000, 2000, 3000 years old. How come not one palace survived? It was because those palaces were not built as strongly as those temples. So you'll have to notice that the priority was given to the temples because they were the banks, they were the knowledge production centers, they were the community gathering centers. Everything was the temple. The temple was the center of the social life, economic life, educational life, cultural life. Everything was the temple. So the palace did not have such a priority in the minds of the citizens, not the family running the country. Okay, Abhay, Ambedkarites are most casteist than UCs nowadays. Yeah, the language they use against Brahmins is the same as the language used against Jews. Our country has a lot of snakes. Okay, Abhay, have you watched Advaita Kala's podcast about Punjab issue today? Yes, Rohan. Okay, I'm reading their conversation. Okay, now floods and drought. Chanakya says, a drought is worse than too much rain because drought destroys livelihood. Now we go to the explanation of the translator. This was Chanakya's quote, now the explanation. During the rainy season, villagers who live near riverbanks shall move to higher ground. They shall keep a collection of wooden planks, bamboo and boats. Persons carried away by floods shall be rescued using girds, skin bags, tree trunks, canoes, boats and thick ropes. Owners of canoes shall be punished if they do not try to save someone in danger. This is nice. Owners of canoes shall be punished if they do not try to save someone in danger. Persons learned in the Vedas and experts in Tantra shall use prayers and incantations against excessive rain. Conversely, Indra, the Ganges, the mountains and the god of sea shall be worshipped in the times of drought. Okay. Afin is saying, oh, by the way, I found out Peer is apparently a Hindu upadhi also. Oh, dear God. Nice. Sowell said it was very emotional today. First time I felt bad for him. Oh, they were crying or what? I see. Afin, if you're interested in what Shayok has to say, you can check out my 2-part interview with him. It's in the channel only. Okay, now human and animal diseases and epidemics. The following shall be called upon to counteract diseases and epidemics affecting human beings. Physicians by using medicines, ascetics by purificatory or expiatory rites, and experts by occult means. Making oblations to or organizing night festivals in honor of gods, worship of the god of the sea, milking cows in cremation grounds, and burning effigies, and other methods of averting the danger of epidemics. And notice how burning effigies kind of has the same application as voodoo. Voodoo is very looked down upon because of Hollywood movies, but voodoo is actually a very respected custom in many indigenous pre-Abrahamic cultures. In case of diseases and epidemics affecting cattle, purificatory rites of their sheds and special worship of the appropriate gods shall be performed. These are Chanakya's quotes. Okay, Harsh Jha is now asking who is the guy behind you. That guy is my friend Shayok Paul. He comes to hang out on Saturday nights and he's working on his laptop. He's an AI engineer, machine learning expert, whom I have interviewed. You can check out his interview on my channel. Okay, now famines. The methods of counteracting the effects of famine are distribute to the public on concessional terms seeds and food from the royal stores, which was done in the times of the coronavirus. Undertake food for work programs such as building forts or irrigation works. This is nice. सिर्फ distribute seeds and food तो ठीक है, but that's not the only thing that's going to be done. Food for work programs भी होगा कि ठीक है अभी famine हुआ तो आ जाओ fort build कर दो, irrigation works dam वैम build कर दो तो और भी खाना मिलेगा. Share out the royal food stocks. अभी royal food stock होगा तब ना share करेगा. This is what basically the Mughals first introduced into the country. Before Islamic invaders, there were no mentions of famines, or at least it was not a common thing as it became in the times of Mughal kingdoms, and especially Shah Jahan, when, as most of you all know probably already, that when he was building the Taj Mahal, the country was going through, entire kingdom was going through a famine, because they didn't know how to conserve food or keep grains stored in their royal godowns or something. So royal food stock जो एक concept है, that was recommended by Arthashastra in Arthashastra by Chanakya, but the Mughals did not know about this. Mughals had no idea that food grain store भी करना होता है. तो आज यहाँ मिला, खाओ भागो यहाँ से. Commandeer, or now we are going on learning what to do in times of famine. Share out the royal food stocks. Commandeer for public distribution private stocks of food. Seek the help of friendly kings. Shift the affected population to a different region. Encourage temporary migration to another country. जो friendly relations अगर किसी के साथ हो तो तब. Move the entire population with the king and court to a region or country with abundant harvest or near the sea, lakes or rivers. And the last option is supplement the harvest with additional cultivation of grain, vegetables, roots and fruits by fishing and by hunting deer, cattle, birds and wild animals. देखते हैं क्या क्या comment आया है. Okay, you all are discussing Suhail. Okay, nice. Okay, now what to do in terms of in the case of rats, locusts, etc. अगर ये सब आ जाए, अगर ये सब से famine हो तो. In case of danger from rats, locusts, birds or insects, the appropriate animals, that is, for example, cats or mongoose, shall be let loose, and these predators protected from being killed or harassed by dogs. Poisoned grain may be strewn around, and purificatory rites may be performed by experts. Or the rat tax. There's a rat tax. That is, a quota of dead rats to be brought in by each one may be fixed. There's a quota for rat hunters. That is the rat tax. तो इतना rats तुमको मारना ही होगा in a fixed period of time. Now, wild animals. In case of danger from marauding animals such as tigers or crocodiles, or herds of animals or flocks of birds, etc., the following methods may be adopted. Leave poisoned carcasses, poisoned dead bodies of adult or young animals, ताकि उसको खा के कोई मर जाए. Get hunters and fowlers hidden in pits or cages to trap or kill them. Send men suitably armed and armored to kill them. And failure to try to save someone threatened by a wild animal is a punishable offense. The reward for saving someone is the same, that is 12 pun. Pun was the currency of those days. Now, what to do in case of snakes and aquatic dangers? In case of snake bite, an expert in poisons shall be called to apply his medicines and incantations. The people shall join together in finding and killing poisonous snakes and dangerous things living in water. Experts in Atharva Veda shall perform the necessary rites to ward off the dangers. What to do in case of evil spirits? Experts in Atharva Veda and in occult sciences shall perform rites of exorcism. Okay, now relative seriousness. Which of the divine calamities are more serious than others? इसका एक ranking है. Which should be prioritized? Some teachers say that fire is more serious than floods because destruction by fire is irremediable, consuming all. One can escape from floods and its damage can be alleviated. Kautilya, however, considers floods to be more dangerous because it destroys hundreds of villages while fire destroys only one village or a part of it. Some teachers say that disease and epidemics are worse than famine because pestilence brings all state activities to a stop, with men falling ill and dying, but during famine, all works does not stop and it is still possible to collect revenue in gold or commodities or cattle. Kautilya disagrees. Pestilence usually devastates only a region of the country, and remedies can be found for the disease. Famine, on the other hand, affects the whole country and deprives the people of their livelihood. The reasoning is that floods and famine, which affect agricultural production and the livelihood of people and state revenue, are more serious than fire and disease, the effects of which tend to be more local. The other adversities like rats, etc., have consequences even more limited. Now we get into calamities due to acts of men. Okay? Man-made calamities. Okay, let me check out some comments. Rohan is saying, Abhay, remember that podcast about RSS supporting LGBTQ podcast on Advaita's channel? The way AIM mocked Bengali communists with Bengali accent was hilarious. Bengali communists are a different breed. Okay, so calamities due to acts of men. Some teachers consider, now first is depredations of armies. That is the first category inside the larger category of calamities caused by humans. So some teachers consider harassment by one's own army to be more serious than that by an enemy's army, because one's own army harasses people by excessive violence or exactions and cannot be remedied. When an enemy's army goes on the rampage, one can fight, escape by flight, or neutralize it by a treaty. Kautilya disagrees, saying that harassment by one's own army can be countered by winning over or destroying the leaders. In any case, such harassment affects only a part of the country. Harassment by the enemy's army not only affects the whole country, but also ruins it by plunder, slaughter, burning and destruction. So you see, this particular portion, how relevant it is in today's discussion as well, because the commies will tell you that some army people who have done some atrocities in Northeast or Kashmir, some soldiers who got accused of rape and even got convicted of rape and false encounters, etc. Commies will tell you that that's more dangerous than whatever Pakistan is trying to do to the country. And in this specific case, Kautilya disagrees. Kautilya says that harassment by one's own army can be countered by winning over or destroying the leaders. And even if it is the case that such atrocities are going on, such harassment affects only a part of the country. That is what commies don't understand. While harassment by the enemy's army not only affects the whole country, it definitely attacks the whole country as opposed to the part of the country. Not only it affects the whole country, but also ruins it by plunder. Because that is what would happen if Pakistan ever won a war against Indian army. In their dreams, that is. But also ruins it by plunder, slaughter, burning and destruction. Yes, that's what would happen if Pakistan ever came in. Okay, now we get into internal strife, civil wars and such, riots, etc. Some teachers say that civil strife among the people is worse than quarrels among members of the royal family. Okay. Civil strife creating a split among the people invites attacks by enemies. This is what some other teachers say, other rishis say, not Chanakya. Civil strife creating a split among the people invites attacks by enemies. When there is a quarrel within the royal family, the people benefit by double food and wages as well as exemption from taxes, by each side wooing them. This is what the other rishis think, who think that if the family members inside the royal family are fighting, that will benefit the people because they might end up trying to prove themselves harder with the people, and so some family member will exempt this tax, some family member will try to dole out that welfare policy, etc. But Kautilya disagrees. Quarrels among the people can be resolved by winning over the leaders or by removing the cause of the quarrel. While people fighting among themselves help the king by their mutual rivalry. But conflicts for power within the royal family, on the other hand, bring about harassment and destruction to the people, and double the exertion is required to end such conflicts. Now, decadence. So now Chanakya asks himself a question that which is worse, decadence of the people or decadence of the king? Some teachers say that it is worse having a people given over to pleasures, because decadence meaning that काम वाम नहीं करता है, सिर्फ सिर्फ चिप्स खा रहा है, वीडियो गेम खेल रहा है, सेक्स कर रहा है, ऐसा. Some teachers say that it is worse having a people, having a population given over to pleasures, because they bring threefold ruin to production, that is past, present and future. They do not care for crops sown in the past, they do not sow crops at the right time, and they do not prepare the land for future sowing. But a decadent king, at least, fosters artisans, actors, reciters, courtesans and traders. तो अलग दूसरे ऋषिज बोल रहे हैं कि अगर किंग ऐसा डेकेडेंट बन भी गया तो वो तो गाना वाना सुनेगा, आर्टिस्ट को फंड करेगा क्योंकि उसको गाना सुनना है, पेंटिंग देखना है, मज़े करना है, तो मज़े करने के लिए वो और भी एम्प्लॉयमेंट जनरेट करेगा. बट कौटिल्य डिसएग्रीज. People taking to pleasures, that is the common people, the population, people taking to pleasures consume little. They do so to relax from the fatigue of work, and they get back to work again after relaxation. But a decadent king, on the other hand, oppresses the people by demanding gifts, seizing what he wants, and grabbing for himself and his favorites the produce of the country. That is, the king and his coterie consume more than their due share, thus considerably impoverishing the treasury and the people. Okay, someone saying, okay, Abhay is saying, imagine people playing video games in Chanakya's times. Yes. Harassment by queens, mistresses and princes. Some teachers say that a prince harasses more by demanding gifts and seizing for himself and his friends the production of the country. But a favorite queen or mistress is only interested in her own pleasures. But Kautilya disagrees. Kautilya says that a wayward prince, जो prince जो कि अच्छा आदमी नहीं है, a prince can be kept in check with the help of ministers and the purohita. But the king's favorite queen cannot be controlled because she is stubbornly childish and usually associates with harmful persons. Okay, now rebellious guilds or chiefs. Some teachers say that between a rebellious fighting guild and a rebellious chief, the guild is worse. A guild harasses the people by robbery and looting and is more difficult to suppress because of larger numbers, but a rebellious chief only reduces revenue by favoring some and obstructing production by others. But Kautilya disagrees. A guild which behaves as a unit can be subdued by capturing its leader or a part of the unit. A rebellious chief is usually haughty, H-A-U-G-H-T-Y, arrogant. A rebellious chief is usually haughty and oppresses people by destroying lives and property. Okay, now we get to harassment by important ministers. The two highest ranking ministers are the Samahartra or chancellor and Samnidhatra or the treasurer. Some teachers say that oppression by the treasurer is worse because he harasses by finding fault with whatever is done and levies fines which he pockets, which he takes home. The chancellor, on the other hand, cannot do much harm since he is supervised by an audit bureau, and can only enjoy what is legitimately assigned to him. Kautilya disagrees by pointing out that the avenues open to the chancellor for harassing the people are more. The chancellor has more chances of harassing the people. The treasurer can only appropriate what is brought into the treasury by others. But the chancellor collects his own revenue first, and then he may collect the king's revenue or even let it go to ruin. He can do as he pleases with other people's property. That's why Chanakya always said that be careful about government employees. Just like a fish, when you just like you won't find out or realize when a fish is drinking water, you will never understand when a government employee is stealing money. That's Chanakya's quote. Okay, now the calamity caused by dishonest customs officials and traders. Some rishis say that that frontier customs, that is the border pe jo customs officer hai, those officers harass the people by levying excessive duties or permit robbers to attack trade routes by colluding with them. तो उनके साथ ही उनका अंडरस्टैंडिंग हो जाता है, जैसे कि आजकल भी होता है. So these problems are thousands of years old. It's not like now it's happening because India is now all of a sudden a corrupt country or something. bad people were always there, corrupt people were always there. They needed to be kept in check. So some teachers say that the frontier customs officers harass the people by levying excessive duties or permit robbers by colluding with them to attack trade routes. Traders, on the other hand, bring prosperity to the people through trade. Now, on this, Kautilya disagrees as well. It is the frontier officer who promotes trade, whereas traders form cartels in order to raise prices for the goods they sell or lower them for the goods they buy. They are profiteers making 100 pun or 1 pun or 100 measures on 1 measure of grain. So they are making unfair profits. So dishonest traders are worse than dishonest customs officials. Now, seizure of common land. ये जो पाकिस्तान में होते रहता है, कोई भी आके प्लॉट वॉट ले लेता है. तो Chanakya asks himself, should the king allow common land to be seized by a nobleman or let it be used as pasture? In either case, it is not available to the people for cultivation. Some teachers say that it is better to use it as pasture. A person of noble birth occupying land makes it productive. He also supplies men for the army. It is therefore difficult to retrieve, for fear that the owner might create trouble. Pasture land, being suited for agriculture, is fit to be reclaimed. But Kautilya disagrees. Though highly productive, land seized by a noble should be liberated because he might become too powerful and cause difficulties. It is not necessary to convert pasture land held for grazing cattle, since it enriches the treasury and produces animals for transport. The only exception is when such pasture impedes sowing of crops in other cultivable lands. Now, marauders. Dakat Vakat. Which are more dangerous, highway robbers or jungle tribes? Some teachers hold highway robbers to be more dangerous because they ambush and attack people at night, steal hundreds of thousands of pun, and make chiefs angry by creating problems for them. Tribes, on the other hand, operate in uninhabited jungles or remote frontier regions, move about openly, and harm only a part of the country. Kautilya disagrees on this. Robbers rob only the negligent people who are not careful enough, and are also few in numbers, and are relatively weak. It is also easy to know their whereabouts and capture them. Unsubdued jungle tribes live in their own territory, are more numerous, brave, fight in the daylight, and with their ability to seize and destroy countries, behave like kings. So according to Chanakya, the jungle tribes are more problematic than highway robbers. Now, the calamities that are caused from dangers from forests. Forests with many animals, such as deer, produce abundant meat and skins. The animals which eat naturally, that is growing grass, do not need to be fed specially with fodder. They are easy to control. Elephant forests are the reverse. The elephants are difficult to capture and tame, and rogue elephants can cause havoc. Just a recap that Kautilya says that there are at least 3 kinds of forests. One are just elephant forests, just where elephants will grow, they'll grow up happily. From there they'll be captured and used for armies and for kings, etc. So there are the forests just for elephants, there are forests just for ascetics, and then there are forests just for hanging out, hunting, and looking at fruits, etc. That's when the king hangs out with his queen, etc. Just for chilling. Namaste Anna. Namaste Tatvabodhaka. You are Kannada, right? Okay, I had to ask you one other thing I forgot to ask yesterday. So Sojuga the Sujumalligi also I'm doing a cover. Now let me know if that's a Sanskrit song or a Kannada song. I don't know about that one as well. Okay, Kautilya then examines 2 special aspects of calamities which can affect the population. The relative harm when such calamities afflict the people or their chiefs, and then the choice of helping only natives or both natives and aliens during calamitous times. Okay, now effect on people and chiefs. Some rishis consider a calamity to the common people to be more serious than one affecting chiefs. This is the Komi viewpoint, which was held by multiple rishis back then. So it does not have to be just a Komi viewpoint. It's just the more sympathetic viewpoint, I guess. But we need to operate with empathy and not sympathy. Chanakya never operates on sympathy. So those rishis say that a calamity to the common people is more serious than the one affecting chiefs, because when common people are affected, all state undertakings come to a standstill. When chiefs are affected, they can only obstruct the work of the state, but not totally stop them. Kautilya disagrees with this. He says, the loss of common men can be made good, because there are so many of them. Not so the loss of chiefs, because they are few. 1 in 1,000, maybe not even one, has leadership qualities. Common men look up to such men because of their courage and wisdom. So he says, loss of men can be made good, because there are so many of them. Common people to aayenge jayenge. But loss of chiefs is a bigger problem, because he's saying that 1 in 1,000, one chief in 1,000 chiefs is actually good enough for his job. Maybe not even one has leadership qualities. तो अगर ऐसे chiefs मर गए तो that's a bigger problem. Relief measures. In times of calamities, it is better to direct the relief activities towards one's own people by giving them grains, cattle, money, and forest produce. This will sustain them through the calamity. The help given to aliens or the people of the enemy can bring harm later. To summarize Kautilya's views on oppression and harassment of people, the translator writes, power conflicts among members of the royal family is worse than civil strife among the people. A spoiled king is worse than a spoiled population. A favorite queen or mistress of the king causes more damage than a wayward prince. An arrogant and rebellious chief destroys life and property more than a rebellious guild. The harassment of an administrator is worse than that of a revenue collector, and profiteering traders are worse than corrupt customs officials. It is better to let fallow land be used as pasture than let it be seized by noblemen. Yeah, definitely. That is the problem Pakistan is facing today, because they didn't follow this policy. Protecting people from robbers is less important than subduing remote forest tribes, because the tribes can challenge the authority of the king. A harassing army, even one's own, should be subdued by destroying its leaders. The first preference in relief works is to one's own people. At all times, courageous and wise chiefs should be cherished because they are so few in numbers. And here are some punishments relating to these. Failure to save someone carried away by floods, even though the person who should have saved them had a canoe. In that case, the punishment is 12 pund. Catching or killing predatory animals, but not restraining dogs from harassing them, 12 pund. That is interesting. You are supposed to catch or kill predatory animals, but you are not supposed to let your dogs harass them. पकड़ो मार दो, but फालतू में टॉर्चर मत करो, harass मत करो अपने कुत्तों के help से. That's very nice. 12 pund for doing that. Also, not trying to save someone threatened by a wild animal. The punishment for that is 12 pund as well. Okay, now we start a new chapter on vices. क्या क्या personal flaws हो सकते हैं, उन पे ये chapter है. Let me drink some water. Let me take this off. Hello. Now vices. We shall now consider people's vices because they are the cause of personal adversities. Haha, ये तो लगता है किसी कॉमी को पता ही नहीं है. I don't think one single commie would agree with this sentence. But the translator writes this, but actually Chanakya writes this as if it's a given known common sense fact, but commies with no common sense will disagree on this. Chanakya says, we shall now consider people's vices because they are the cause of personal adversities. तुम्हारा vices है इसलिए तुम्हारा personal adversities हो रहा है. ऑपरेशन के लिए पेट्रियार्की की वजह से नहीं हो रहा है. Vices are due to ignorance and indiscipline. Vices are due to ignorance and indiscipline. An unlearned man does not perceive the injurious consequences of his vices. If someone is not understanding what are the problems caused by his vices, then that person needs to be considered to be an unlearned man. Okay. Abhay says, "Pani re pani tere rang kaisa." First subchapter on vices is anger and desire. 3 kinds of vices are due to anger, and 4 kinds of vices are due to uncontrolled desire. Of the two, anger is worse because it knows no boundaries. It is well known that angry kings have often been killed by popular fury. लोगों को ही गुस्सा आ गया तो मार दिया गुस्से वाला राजा को. Whereas greedy and lustful kings have perished by disease, AIDS, etc., poverty, or enemy action. Rishi Bharadwaj, disagrees. Okay, and if I have not said this already, but remember that the entire Arthashastra is written like a technical paper, okay? So the book is full of citations. He cites people, other scholars, agrees with them, disagrees with them, etc. So like now he cites Bharadwaja. Bharadwaja disagrees with what he said. Bharadwaja disagrees and is of the view that anger and desire are good things. Interesting. Bharadwaja says, anger provides the proper motivation for a righteous man, enabling him to put down enemies, avenge insults, and cause fear in people. And resort to anger is always needed to put down sin. Okay, that is interesting. That is an interesting view. Rishi Bharadwaja is saying that even if you want to put down your own sin, उसके लिए भी anger ही चाहिए. Likewise, desire is the motivating force for attainment of success. Desire is the motivating force for attainment of success, reconciliation, generosity, and endearing oneself to all. ये सब desire से ही होगा. Desire is always necessary for one who wants to enjoy the fruits of his labor. That is the capitalist view actually. Rishi Bharadwaj is taking the more dil mange, more free market view. This is a very American view, what Rishi Bharadwaj is saying. But Kautilya disagrees because he is the very middle of the path guy, middle of the road guy. Kautilya disagrees. Anger makes one the object of hatred, creates enemies, and brings suffering on oneself. Excessive greed and lust bring about humiliation, loss of wealth, and association with undesirable persons like thieves, gamblers, hunters, singers, and musicians. Okay, singers and musicians are considered to be undesirable persons, okay? While both have bad consequences, being angry and having too much desire, being hated is worse than humiliation. Whereas one humiliated is held in thrall by his own people and by enemies, a hated one is destroyed. Likewise, making enemies is worse than losing one's wealth. Making enemies is worse than losing one's wealth. The latter only causes, that is, the poverty. Poverty only causes financial distress, but having enemies causes endangerment to the life itself. Suffering on account of vices is worse than associating with undesirable persons. This is an interesting comparison. अपने vices के वजह से suffer करना is more undesirable than associating with undesirable people. The latter can be gotten rid of, that is the undesirable persons associating with them, that can be gotten rid of in a moment. But vices that cause suffering, that happens for a long time. क्योंकि vices तो habits है, वो तो आसानी से जाता नहीं है. Hence, on every count, anger is a more serious evil. Okay, now specifically a small subchapter on anger. The 3 kinds of vices arising from anger are inflicting verbal injury, causing injury to one another's property, and inflicting physical injury. Inflicting verbal injury would be considered to be, I think it should be called microaggression in today's terms, commie terms. Injuring another's property includes not giving what is due, taking away unjustly, destroying it, and neglecting entrusted property. Now, which is worse? Abuse and insult, violation of property, or physical violence? Now, Vishalaksha Muni, Rishi Vishalaksha says, now Chanakya is citing him now, so that he can disagree with him. Vishalaksha says that verbal injury is worse than destruction of property because a brave man retaliates when spoken to harshly, but the arrows of abuse and insult which lie embedded in the heart inflame the spirit and affect the senses. Verbal injury is worse than destruction of property. Kautilya disagrees because he says, while gifts of money can assuage, that is, alleviate the pain of the darts of speech, but destroying property means depriving another of his livelihood. So Kautilya says, microaggression हो तो प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, वो सिर्फ बातें ही है, मगर एक्चुअली किसी का प्रॉपर्टी उठा लोगे, that's more problematic. The followers of Parashar, he was also a famous rishi. The followers of Parasara say that violation of property is a worse evil than physical injury. Chori karna is worse than maar dena kisi ko. Or physical injury does not mean killing obviously, but injury. In their view, Dharma and Kama are both dependent on Artha, which binds the world together. Kautilya disagrees, saying, we are now going to read a direct quote from Chanakya. No one would want to lose his own life even for a large sum of money. In any case, one who inflicts physical injury is likely to suffer the same fate from others, because कोई physical injury करेगा तो immediately कोई आके उसे मार भी देगा. Therefore, causing physical injury is worse than injury to property, which in turn is also worse than verbal injury. The verbal injury is obviously least important, which we know from common sense these days. Okay, Abhay is saying, Nirajanda Chanakya called you undesirable. Chanakya cancelled. Yes. Now, excessive desire. In the case of excessive desire, the four vices springing from excessive desire are addiction to hunting, addiction to gambling, addiction to women, and addiction to drinking. We now consider the relative seriousness of these vices. ये चार जो addiction है, hunting, gambling, women and drinking, इनमें से कौन सा कितना problematic है? Rishi Pishuna says that in between gambling and hunting is a worse vice because many are the dangers of hunting. One may fall into the hands of robbers or enemies, be trampled by wild elephants, be engulfed by forest fire or lose one's way. One may suffer from hunger and thirst and even lose one's life. In gambling, however, an expert like Jayatsena or Duryodhana always wins. Kautilya disagrees. Of the two parties in gambling, one has to lose, as we know from the stories of Nala and Yudhishthira. The same wager won by one is to the loser fish hook, which becomes a source of enmity. A gambler never knows how much wealth he has got, tries to enjoy wealth which he has not got, and loses it before he can enjoy it. Being irregular in his habits, he contracts stomach, urinary, and bowel disorders. That is what happens when you are addicted to gambling, according to Chanakya. On the other hand, there are some good points about hunting. The physical exercise helps to get rid of not only phlegm and bile, but also fat by sweating it out. Chanakya is looking at the side effects of having the health benefits of being a hunter. The physical exercise helps to get rid of phlegm and bile and also fat by sweating it out. Skill in hitting and moving stationary targets is acquired. Knowledge of animals when they are angry, afraid, or at rest, that is also gained. That knowledge is gained. There is only occasional need for walking long distances. But Konapadanta, another rishi, considers gambling to be worse than lusting after women. Now we are going to do a comparison between these two. Addiction to women versus addiction to gambling. A gambler's addiction is total. So Konapadanta says gambling is worse than lusting after women because the gambler's addiction is total. He plays continuously during the day and at night by lamplight, and even when his mother is dying. He gets angry when someone talks to him when he is in trouble. On the other hand, conversation on Dharma and Kama is possible with one infatuated with women when he is bathing, dressing or eating. So he's saying at least जब नहा रहा है, खाना खा रहा है और ड्रेस चेंज कर रहा है, तब तो एटलीस्ट कोई जाके उसको समझा सकता है. It's not like he's 24 hours hanging out with a woman having sex with her. So, but in case of gambling, that becomes a 24-hour thing. Women could also be useful in influencing the king towards good things. A bad woman can be gotten rid of by clandestine methods, by secret methods, or by accusing her of being diseased. कितने हरामी लोग हैं. Kautilya disagrees. A gambler can be reformed, but not so a man who lusts after women. The evils of lust are failure to see reality, neglect of work, the loss of dharma, and material wealth due to not doing things at the right time, loss of political acumen, and addiction to drinking because of being addicted to women. He's saying those go hand in hand. Now, another rishi, Vatavyadhi, considers lust worse than addiction to drinking. Now we are going to compare drinking versus lust. Because many are the dangers arising from the foolishness of women, as has been explained in the section on the women of the palace. Drinking, on the other hand, gives pleasure to the senses, helps to show affection to others, क्योंकि अगर कोई अच्छा मूड में चला जाए दारू पी के, helps to show affection to others and is a way of honoring followers by drinking with them. This is a nice point. It helps to relieve the fatigue caused by work. Kautilya disagrees. In having relations with women of the house, there are two advantages: begetting children and self-protection. If one lusts after outside women or those with whom relationship is forbidden, then one loses these advantages. It is the same with drink. तो अगर घर में खाओ प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, यहाँ वहाँ पूरा दिन पीते फिरोगे तब प्रॉब्लम है. There are also other adverse effects of drinking: loss of one's senses, acting like a madman, loss of health to the extent of looking like a corpse even when alive, shamelessness in exposing oneself, separation from good people, association with harmful ones, excessive indulgence in music and singing, throwing away one's wealth, as well as loss of learning, intellect, strength, and good friends. So Chanakya says drinking is worse than lust, because with lust it can be controlled if someone's not bothered in those, but not engaging in the act at that time, at during the entire day, that is. Because Vatavyadhi considers lust worse than drink, but Chanakya says drinking is worse than lust. Kautilya continues, of gambling and addiction to drink, gambling is worse. Gambling with one's property and betting on animal races leads to a win for one and a loss to the other. The consequences is that factions are formed and strife ensues because of that gambling. Particularly in the case of oligarchies and confederacies of kings resembling oligarchies, gambling promotes factionalism, and the ruling groups are thus destroyed. Gambling is the most evil among vices, because it destroys the ruling classes by depriving them of their ability to govern. So to summarize, subject to the qualification that gambling is most dangerous in cases where there is more than one entity sharing power, the vice with the most serious consequences is addiction to drink, followed by lusting after women, then gambling, and lastly hunting. Excessive desire leads to the cultivation of evil things, while anger causes the abandonment of good things. Since both result in a multitude of evils, both are classified as calamities that affect human beings. A king should hence learn to control his senses by associating himself with wise elders. By exercising self-control, he can free himself of excessive desire and anger. The starting points of all calamities which eventually destroy the inherited kingdom are desire and anger. What a beautiful sentence. By exercising self-control, he can free himself of excessive desire and anger, which are the starting points of all calamities which eventually destroy the inherited kingdom. This chapter is over. Okay, Abhay is saying, जा रहा हूँ दारू पीने, सुनकर मन हो गया. Okay, now part 3. We discuss the king. This entire chapter is on the king. Chanakya says, the king and his rule encapsulate all the constituents of the state. A king who observes his duty of protecting his people justly, according to law, goes to heaven, unlike one who does not protect his people or inflicts unjust punishment. A king who flouts the teachings of the Dharmashastras and the Arthashastra ruins the kingdom by his own injustice. In the Arthashastra, king is often used to signify the state, since he embodies all the constituents. Okay, so the government, the state is equal to the king. Those two terms will be used interchangeably. In this translation, the two are used interchangeably depending on the context. The 7 sections of this part deal with the personal aspect of kingship. Okay, now this is going to be interesting. The training of a future king. The importance of self-discipline. This is the first sub-chapter under the chapter called The Training of a Future King. Importance of self-discipline. The 3 sciences, philosophy, the 3 Vedas, and economics, are dependent for their development on science of government. Because without a just administration, a fair administration, no pursuit of learning or avocation would be possible, like in the case of Pakistan. Government by rule of law, which alone can guarantee security of life and the welfare of the people, is in turn dependent on the self-discipline of the king. King का self-discipline होगा तभी जाके welfare of the people होगा, security of life होगा, जो कि rule of law से होगा. Rule of law cannot happen if the king is not self-disciplined. Discipline is of 2 kinds, inborn and acquired. So it's not like you are by nature, by birth you are indisciplined or disciplined. Discipline is a learned skill. It can be acquired, Chanakya says. There must be an innate capacity for self-discipline for the reasons given below. Instruction and training can promote discipline only in a person capable of benefiting from them. People incapable of natural self-discipline do not benefit. Learning imparts discipline only to those who have the following mental faculties. Okay. People who are not born disciplined, वो लोग कैसे disciplined बनेंगे? सिर्फ वही लोग can learn discipline, those who have these particular characteristics. Obedience to a teacher, desire and ability to learn, capacity to retain what is learned, understanding what is learned, reflecting on it, and finally, ability to make inferences by deliberating on the knowledge acquired. This is the way of learning in Indic ethos basically. You read, you contemplate, then apply. Those who are devoid of such mental faculties are not benefited by any amount of training. One who will be a king should acquire discipline and follow it strictly in life by learning the sciences from authoritative teachers. The training of a prince. A prince who is likely to become a king should learn the alphabet and arithmetic as soon as the tonsure ceremony is performed in the 3rd year after birth. After a few years, when the ceremony of the sacred thread is performed and the prince enters the ashrama of a brahmachari, he should learn philosophy and the 3 Vedas from authoritative teachers, economics from the heads of various government departments, and the science of government from not only theoretical exponents of political science but also from practicing politicians. Political science सिर्फ प्लेटो और एरिस्टोटल घर पे बैठ के पढ़ने से नहीं होगा. रास्ते में जाके पॉलिटिशियन से भी मिलना होगा, मंत्रियों से भी बात करना पड़ेगा प्रॉपरली पॉलिटिक्स सीखने के लिए. He should remain a brahmachari, a celibate student, till he is 16. He should then have the second tonsure ceremony and get married. A prince's education does not stop with his reaching manhood and getting married. Education abhi bhi khatam nahi hua hai. With a view to improving his self-discipline, he should always associate with learned elders, because in them alone has discipline its firm roots. Learned elders के साथ hang out करने से ही discipline सीख पाएंगे. His training program shall be as follows. During the first part of the day, he shall be trained in the martial arts, with elephants, horses, chariots and weapons as an infantryman. In the latter part of the day, he shall listen to itihasas. In the remaining part of the day and at night, he shall prepare new lessons for the next day, revise old lessons, and listen repeatedly to things which he had not understood clearly. A prince's education does not stop with his reaching manhood and getting married. With a view to improving his self-discipline, He should always associate with learned elders, because in them alone has discipline its firm roots. His training program shall be as follows. During the first part of the day, he shall be trained in the martial arts, with elephants, horses, chariots, and weapons as an infantryman. In the latter part of the day, he shall listen to itihasas. In the remaining part of the day and at night, he shall prepare new lessons for the next day, revise old lessons, and listen repeatedly to things which he had not understood clearly. अच्छा, इतिहास को लेकर एक footnote है, बाद में है. Okay, because a trained intellect is the result of learning by hearing from intellectual from intellect. Okay. A trained intellect is the result of learning by hearing. From intellect ensues yoga. Yoga meaning successful application. From yoga, that is from successful application, comes self-possession. That is what is meant by efficiency in acquiring knowledge. Chanakya says, only a king who is wise, disciplined, devoted to a just governing of the subjects, and ever conscious of the welfare of all beings will enjoy the earth unopposed. Okay, now self-control. An entire chapter on self-control. Okay, Abhay says, compare this with India's current education system. Yeah. Okay, now self-control. Self-control mein the first subchapter is renouncing the 6 enemies. The single aim of all branches of knowledge is to inculcate restraint over the senses. Sanyam. Self-control, which is the basis of knowledge and discipline, is acquired by giving up lust, anger, greed, conceit, arrogance, and foolhardiness. Living in accordance with the Shastras means avoiding overindulgence in all pleasures of the senses, that is hearing, touch, sight, taste, and smell. A king who has no self-control and gives himself up to excessive indulgence in pleasures will soon perish, even if he is the ruler of all 4 corners of the earth. Certain examples of kings who were destroyed for falling prey to one or the other of the vices mentioned above. Now we get 2 examples. Dandakaya, a Bhoja king, and Kadala, a Videha king, for having lusted after Brahmin girls. Janamejaya and Talajangha for showing anger against Brahmins. These were the kings who were destroyed because of these vices. The son of Ila and Ajabindu of the Suviras because of greed. Ravana and Duryodhana for refusing to restore another's wife or a portion of the kingdom out of conceit about their own invulnerability. उनको खुद को ही पता नहीं था कि वो लोग vulnerable हो सकते हैं. The extra arrogance. Dambodh and Arjuna of the Haihaya dynasty because of their arrogance, and Vatapi and Vrishni against Agastya and Dvaipayana respectively because of their foolhardiness. All these and many others lacking self-control and falling prey to the 6 enemies, that is lust, anger, greed, conceit, arrogance, and foolhardiness, all of these people perished with their kinsmen and kingdoms. That is why kingdoms come and go. On the other hand, kings like Jamadagnya and Ambarisha, who had conquered their senses, long enjoyed their kingship on earth. Okay, Abhay says, for example, Imran Khan. Yes. Okay, Raja Rishi, a wise king. For example, Manu himself, Swayambhuva Manu. A Raja Rishi, a king wise like a sage, is one who has self-control, having conquered the inimical temptations of the senses. अभी उसका पूरा पॉइंट बाय पॉइंट हम कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स पढ़ने वाले हैं राजा ऋषि का, ठीक है. दिस विल बी इंटरेस्टिंग. राजा ऋषि का कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स क्या है? फर्स्ट कैरेक्टरिस्टिक, हैज सेल्फ कंट्रोल, हैविंग कॉन्कर्ड द inimical temptations of the senses. Next characteristic, cultivates the intellect by association with elders. Next, keeps his eyes open through spies. Next, is ever active in promoting the security and welfare of the people. Then ensures the observance by the people of their dharma by authority and example. Ensures the observance of their dharma by the people, that is. So he inspires the people to follow their dharma by authority and setting the example himself, because he follows dharma to the letter himself. so that the people feel inspired to follow their own dharma. Then improves his own discipline by continuing his learning in all branches of knowledge. This is a very important point. Continuing his learning. It's not like he read some particular books or did one course and then thought that, okay, now my education is over. Now let's just be a king and have fun. That's not what being a king in the Hindu civilization is all about. Improves his own discipline by continuing his learning in all branches of knowledge. And endears himself to his people by enriching them and doing good to them. Such a disciplined king should keep away from another's wife, should not covet another's property, should not think about having someone else's property, should practice ahimsa, non-violence towards all living things, should avoid daydreaming, capriciousness, falsehood and extravagance, and must avoid association with harmful persons and indulging in harmful activities. There is no need for such a king to deprive himself of. Notice one thing here, that how calmly, how casually Chanakya mentioned ahimsa, recommends ahimsa for a Raja Rishi. So when they talk about ahimsa, it's not ahimsa in the face of odds. It's not ahimsa when you are getting harmed. When they say, when they utter the word ahimsa, they think it's such a big common sense that they don't even mention that अहिंसा जब कोई मारने आएगा तब अहिंसा नहीं करना है, अहिंसा बाकी वक्त के लिए है. They don't even feel the need to specify this, okay? This is so obvious in that society, or at least in Chanakya's mind. अब हमको स्पेसिफाई करना पड़ता है, नहीं नहीं, अरे अहिंसा तो हर वक्त के लिए नहीं है, गांधी ने अहिंसा बोला था तो क्या हो गया. तो you see, Chanakya obviously is not crazy. He would never recommend that a king does ahimsa when a different king is attacking his kingdom. So it's obvious that he's not going to recommend ahimsa for the entirety of a king's life. And even then, without specifying these things, he says a Raja Rishi should practice ahimsa, which means non-violence towards all living beings when you are not being harmed. So in that sense, we all can be in favor of ahimsa without giving up the right to self-protection or self-defense. This was very obvious and common sense to Chanakya, which is not a common sense anymore. There is no need for such a king, such a Rajarishi king, to deprive himself of all sensual pleasures and live a life of total austerity, as long as he does not infringe his dharma or harm his own material well-being. कर सकते हो, थोड़ा बहुत मजे कर सकते हो, but do not infringe your own dharma and do not harm your own material well-being. Some teachers say that the three objectives of human endeavor, dharma, artha and kama, are interdependent and should be pursued equally. Excessive importance given to any one brings harm not only to that objective but to the other objectives as well. Kautilya, however, says artha, that is sound economics, is the most important because dharma and kama are both dependent on economics, that is artha. A Raja Rishi shall always respect those counselors and purohitas who warn him of the dangers and the dangers of transgressing the limits of good conduct, reminding him sharply, as with a goad, of the times prescribed for various duties, and those counselors and purohitas who caution him even when he makes a mistake in private. Even तब भी अगर वो लोग राजा को बोलते हैं कि सर आप गलत काम कर रहे हैं, तो a Raja Rishi must be wise enough to keep these people in his close circles. He must respect those counselors and purohitas. Only a just king commands the loyalty of the people. The subjects of a just king, a fair king attacked by another, will follow him until death. So the जो प्रजा है, उनका राजा अगर fair है, just है, तो वो प्रजा लोग will follow him until death, even when someone is attacking the kingdom, even if he is weak. On the other hand, when a strong but unjust king is attacked, his people will either topple him or go over to the enemy. The Rajadharma also includes just behavior towards conquered kings. This is the difference between Abrahamic faiths and Hinduism. ये एक sentence में सब clear हो जाएगा. The Rajadharma also includes just behavior, fair behavior towards conquered kings. A disloyal vassal state or a vassal king may be got rid of, but the conqueror shall not covet the slain king's wealth, sons, or wives and instead give them appropriate positions. देखो ये सुनो. This is the difference between Arthashastra and Abrahamic faiths. A disloyal vassal may be gotten rid of अगर ज़्यादा प्रॉब्लम कर रहा है बगर, but the king, the Raja Rishi, should not feel lobe for the dead king's wife, sons, wealth or property, and instead the Raja Rishi is supposed to give appropriate positions in the government to the slain, to the dead king's wife, sons. Now a new chapter, new big subchapter inside the chapter called the king. We are going to discuss duties of a king. Okay, some chapters, some comments have come. Tatya says you should do podcast with Kushal Mehra. I am very insecure about doing podcast because I'm not nearly as well read as Kushal Mehra. So I don't want to make a fool of myself. That's why. A roommate is quietly studying. Yeah, he's writing codes. Oh, he's reading papers. Abhay Agarwal. Krishna's and Chanakya's ahimsa. Yeah. And Krishna was he's a world famous artificial intelligence engineer, and if you want to check out his interview, you can. I have interviewed him in a 2-part series. It's available on my channel, or you can check out the playlist called interview, or you can just search his name, Shayok Paul, College Street, Kolkata. Okay, now we enter duties of a king. If the king is energetic, his subjects will be equally energetic. This seems very true. If he is slack and lazy in performing his duties, the subjects will also be lax and thereby eat into his wealth. Besides, a lazy king will easily fall into the hands of his enemies. Hence, the king should himself always be energetic. This seems like the entire Congress government, right? वो लोग lazy थे, bureaucracy पूरा lazy था, पूरा population ही lazy था. The king shall divide the day and the night each into 8 periods of 1.5 hours and perform his duties as follows. The king shall divide the day and night each into 8 periods of 1.5 hours and perform his duties as follows. First 1.5 hours after sunrise. Receive reports on defense, revenue and expenditure. Second 1.5 hours after sunrise. Public audiences. Public के साथ बातचीत. To hear positions of city and country people. Third 1.5 hours after sunrise, personal, bath, meals and study. 1.5 hours after noon, receive revenue and tributes, appoint ministers and other high officials and allot tasks to them. First 1.5 hours after noon, first 1.5 hours after noon, write letters and dispatches, confer with councillors, receive secret information from spies. Second 1.5 hours after noon, personal. Okay, थोड़ा अभी 1.5 घंटा chill करेंगे. Recreation, time for contemplation. Third 1.5 hours after noon, inspect and review forces. 1.5 hours before sunset, consult with chief of defense. The day shall end with evening prayers. Abhi night. First 1.5 hours after sunset, interview with secret agents. Second 1.5 hours after sunset, personal, bath, meals और study. अगर रात को नहाना हो तो गर्मी वर्मी का मौसम है. 3 hours and 3 hours before sleeping. 3 hours before what? Wait. Okay, this is combined. Okay, 3 hours before and first 1.5 hours after midnight. Okay, retire to the bed chamber to the sound of music. Sleep. Second 1.5 hours after midnight. After waking to the sound of music, meditate on political matters and on the work to be done. ये देखो, नींद के बाद भी उठ जाना है 1.5 घंटे बाद. This is interesting. Second 1.5 hours after midnight. After waking, तो सामने म्यूजिक चलता रहेगा, सॉफ्ट काम रिलैक्सिंग म्यूजिक. वो म्यूजिक सुनते सुनते सो जाना है, उसी म्यूजिक से उठ भी जाना है. Then, after waking to the sound of the music, meditate on political matters and on the work to be done. Third 1.5 hours after midnight, consult with councillors, send out spies. 1.5 hours before sunrise. तो ये सोया कब? 1.5 hours before sunrise, religious and household and personal duties. meetings with his teacher, advisor on rituals, purohita, personal physician, chief cook, and astrologer. At daybreak, he shall circumambulate a cow, its calf, and a bull. उनके चारों ओर घूमना है, and then proceed to his court, because that was pavitra. A king is therefore allowed 10.5 hours out of 24 as his personal time, 3 hours for bath and meals, 1.5 hours for recreation, and 6 hours at night, during which he can sleep for 4.5 hours. The hour and a half before sunrise is to be spent तो सोने के लिए, during which he can sleep for 4.5 hours. 4.5 घंटा दिया है राजा को सोने के लिए. The hour and a half before sunrise is to be spent on palace affairs and personal needs. Out of the 12 hours each day to be spent on state duties, 1.5 hours are to be devoted to public audiences, 3 hours to defense, 3 hours to secret consultations and intelligence, and the balance of 3 hours to secret consultations and intelligence, and the balance 4.5 hours on the administration of the state. The above is only a suggestion, and the king may, in accordance with his capacity, alter the timetable and carry out his duties, but Chanakya says, ये ideal है, ये होगा तो अच्छा होगा. When in court, he shall not make petitioners wait at the door, but attend to them promptly himself. When a king makes himself inaccessible to his people, and he is seen only by those near him, wrong decisions are bound to be made. The people will become angry and may go over to the enemy. A king shall therefore attend to the people in the order given below, except in cases where a matter concerning one lower in the order is more urgent or more important. First is gods and deities, then hermits. Hermits meaning जो कि ascetics के तरह वनप्रस्थ में जिंदगी बिता रहे हैं. Hermits, heretics. Heretics are prioritized over Brahmins. This is interesting. Priority list hai gods and deities, then hermits, then heretics, then Brahmins learned in the Vedas, then cows, sacred places, minors, the aged, the sick, the handicapped, the helpless, and women. He should hear at once. Okay, now just because women are at the bottom of the list does not mean that women don't get any attention, because the hermit could be a woman, the heretic could be a woman, the Brahmin could be a woman. So all those comprise the category of women. So if it's a woman, regardless of all these categories, then even she gets an audience with the king, but at the lowest priority obviously. But also it was mentioned that if the urgency is more of the person below in the priority list, even then that person will get bumped forward. The king should hear at once all urgent matters and not postpone them, because postponement makes them more difficult and sometimes even impossible to settle. He should decide on the affairs of persons learned in the Vedas and of ascetics with due respect to them. Such hearings shall be conducted in the room with the sacred fire. And in the presence of his teacher and the high priest. He should be particularly careful with ascetics and those expert in magic, because such people are easy to anger. Their affairs should never be heard alone, but in the presence of those learned in the 3 Vedas. तो अगर किसी एसेटिक का, किसी ब्राह्मण का, किसी साधु का बात सुन रहे हैं, कंप्लेन सुन रहे हैं, तो वो सुनने के लिए भी पास में कोई खुद का ब्राह्मण या पुरोहित रहेगा जो कि खुद एक्सपर्ट है 3 वेदों में. Brahmins take religious vows, perform sacrificial rituals, offer a fee to those who perform them, and undergo initiation ceremonies. Likewise, for a king, the vow is readiness to action. The ritual is the For a king, the vow is readiness to action. The ritual is the satisfactory performance of his duties, impartiality towards all the reward that he can offer, and his coronation is the initiation into a lifelong vocation. In the happiness of his subjects lies his happiness. This is an important part. These are quotes from Chanakya. In the happiness of his subjects lies his happiness. In their welfare lies his welfare. He shall not consider as good only that which pleases him, but treat as beneficial to him whatever pleases his subjects. जो खुद को प्लीज करता है सिर्फ वो अच्छा है ऐसा नहीं है. What is beneficial to him is whatever pleases his subjects. Hence, the king shall be ever active in the management of the economy. The root, okay, this is, I have heard this sentence before. This is one of my favorite quotes from Chanakya. The roots of wealth is activity, and lack of activity, brings material distress. In the absence of fruitful economic activity, both current prosperity and future growth will be destroyed. A king can achieve the desired objectives and abundance of riches by undertaking productive economic activity. This is a beautiful sentence. Let's read this once more. The king shall be ever active in the management of the economy. The root of wealth is economic activity, and lack of it brings material distress. In the absence of fruitful economic activity, both current prosperity and future growth will be destroyed. A king can achieve desired objects and abundance of riches by undertaking productive economic activity. Okay, a comment says, Abhay says, energetic, for example, Modi. Yeah, pretty much. The king's security. Okay, let me drink some water. King's security, subchapter. In addition to the advice on the personal security of the king and the means of protecting the royal residence, this section also contains the precautions to be taken against danger of assassination by close family members, such as queens or princes. Now, the royal residence, the palace. The king shall have his royal residence built on a site recommended by experts in the science of buildings. The complex shall be surrounded by ramparts and a moat. Moat meaning फोर्ट के बाहर या पैलेस के बाहर जो पानी का घेरा हुआ जगह होता है जिसमें एलिगेटर्स, क्रोकोडाइल्स एटसेट्रा रहते हैं, और अगर कुछ नहीं भी रहे तब भी मोट्स तो रहता ही है. The complex shall be surrounded by ramparts and a moat and be provided with guarded gates. There shall be many halls for different purposes as described below. The king's own chambers shall be built in the center of the complex with emergency exits for use in cases of sudden danger. Any of the following models can be adopted. A protected treasury in 3 underground floors. This sounds like any modern well-developed country's leader, how their security is taken care of. You must have seen in American movies also. White House के नीचे क्या क्या रहता है, White House के अंदर क्या क्या रहता है. It sounds like that. A protected treasury in 3 underground floors. The middle of a labyrinth, bhul bhulaiya, with concealed passages in walls. An underground chamber connected by a stairway hidden in the wall to the living quarters above. Having a concealed underground passage leading to a nearby shrine, the exit from which is hidden by a wooden image of a god. With an emergency exit built in an upper story with a stairway hidden in a wall. Wall के पीछे कितना क्या क्या चीज़ें hidden hide करने को बोल रहा है. With an emergency exit built in an upper story with a stairway hidden in a wall, a hollow pillar, or behind a concealed trapdoor. The type of construction can be varied depending on actual conditions, so long as the need to safeguard oneself against attack by palace intimates is kept in mind. Kautilya describes a number of methods, mostly of an occult nature, tantric nature, for averting dangers like fire, snakes, and poisons in the grounds outside the palace. The residential quarters shall be protected against snakes and other poisons. Plants which deter snakes shall be planted. Snake killers like peacocks and mongooses, and birds which give warnings of the presence of poison like the parrot, shrike, heron, and partridge shall be reared. They shall be kept and bred for the palace. Now, other buildings in the palace complex. Behind the king's own chambers, there shall be built the following: the residences of the royal ladies, the maternity ward, the infirmary, water tanks and groves. The residences of the princes and princesses shall be beyond this group of structures. The following shall be built in front of the king's chamber: the king's dressing room, the council chamber, the audience hall, and the hall for the education of princes. Palace guards shall be stationed in the spaces between the buildings. Movement control. Everyone in the residential complex shall live in the quarters assigned him and shall not move to the quarters of another. No one staying inside shall establish contact with any outsider. Every object which comes into the palace complex or goes out of it shall be examined, its arrival and departure recorded and sent to its destination only after affixing the appropriate seal. Now, the king's personal security. Just as a king watches over the security of others through secret agents, so shall a wise king guard himself against dangers from others. This is a quote from Chanakya. The king's personal guard of female archers. Ye dekho women empowerment. The king's personal guard of female archers shall guard him from an adjacent chamber while he is asleep in his own. On waking up, he shall be received in the second chamber by eunuchs. Hijra. He shall be received in the second chamber by eunuchs, personal attendants and dressers. They were the personal attendants to the king, and we don't need to learn transrights from commies. Arthashastra says kings will have eunuchs as personal attendants and dressers. In the third chamber, by dwarfs, hunchbacks, and kiratas, that is, cave dwellers, for good omen. And in the fourth, by ministers and kinsmen. The doors shall be guarded by lancers. The king shall employ as his personal attendants those whose fathers and grandfathers had been royal servants, those who are bound to him by a close relationship, or trained persons whose loyalty has been proved in service. Foreigners, those whose service has not been thought worthy of reward, and persons of ill will, even if they are natives of the country, shall not be employed as royal guards for protecting the king or his residence. The head cook shall, in a well-guarded place, supervise the cooking of tasty dishes. The king shall eat only freshly cooked food after first making oblations to the sacred fire and offering foods to birds. खुद के खाने से पहले अग्निदेव और पंछियों को खिलाना है. Kautilya then gives a long list of signs by which one can recognize the presence of poisons in food, wine, water, bed sheets, metals, and gems. A poisoner can also be recognized by his unnatural appearance or suspicious behavior. Physicians and experts in the cure of poisons shall attend on the king. The king shall not take any medicines unless its purity has been tested by the physician and he and his helpers have tasted it first. Likewise, the king shall not drink water or wine without it first having been tasted by others, obviously. Barbers and valets shall wait on the king only after they have had a bath and put on clean clothes. They shall receive with clean hands implements of their trade, that is, toilet articles and dresses, in a sealed condition from the concerned officer. The king's female servants of proven integrity shall either supervise the work of bath attendants, shampooers, bed makers, launderers, and garland makers, or do the work themselves. They shall offer garments and flowers to the king after testing them by first putting them to their eyes, and bath oils, fragrant powders, perfumes, and all other substances used for the king's toiletry by applying them to their own arms and breasts. Anything received from persons outside shall be similarly tested. Entertainers, that is, actors and acrobats, those who do gymnastics to entertain people. Actors and acrobats shall not use weapons, fire, or poison in their performances. The instruments of musicians shall always remain inside the palace complex. Likewise, all accoutrements of elephants and horses and all chariots shall remain inside. The king shall mount a carriage or an animal only when attended by trustworthy servants, and get into a boat only when there is a trustworthy boatman, and never if it is towed by another, when there is a high wind. His troops shall be on guard on the water's edge. His troops shall be on guard at the water's edge. He shall not go for a swim unless the water has been cleared of crocodiles and dangerous fish. Similarly, he shall not go into a park unless cleared of snakes. He shall practice game hunting only in jungles cleared by hunters of robbers, wild animals, and enemies. There are some people whom a king should not receive alone. A holy ascetic shall be received only when there are trusted armed guards, because it may be a disguise. Envoys from foreign countries, foreign states, shall be received only in the presence of ministers. He shall inspect fully armed troops only when fully armed himself and riding a horse, an elephant, or a chariot, and not on foot. Never on foot while meeting armed troops, because अगर भागना पड़े तो on foot नहीं होगा. Always be ready. Keep the engine running, as they say in English. When the king leaves or enters the fortified area, the royal road shall be lined on both sides by armed men and truncheon bearers. The roads should be cleared of men carrying arms, ascetics and cripples, since the latter two are likely to be enemy agents, cripples and ascetics. अगर वैसे कोई दिख रहा है तो might be a disguise. He shall not plunge into crowds. He should go to crowded functions such as fairs and festivals only when protected by units of 10 soldiers. Now, protection from queens and princes. A king can protect his kingdom only when he is himself protected from persons near him, particularly his wives and children. सबसे बड़ा खतरा खुद के वाइफ और चिल्ड्रन से है. Queens. There are many cases of kings being murdered by queens or in the queen's apartments. Bhadrasena was killed by his own brother, concealed in the queen's chamber. Similarly, Karusha was killed by his own son, hiding under his mother's bed. Other queens have killed their husbands by putting poison in their food, with a poisoned ornament or jewel, or by a concealed weapon. Therefore, a king shall always be careful and avoid such dangers. The king shall visit the queen in her own apartment only after an old, trusted maidservant assures him that there is no danger from the queen. क्या अजीब जिंदगी है. He shall forbid the queen from having contacts with ascetics with shaven heads or matted hair, jugglers and magicians, or female servants from outside. Nor should the members of the queen's family visit her except in the maternity ward or in the infirmary, that is when she is giving birth or is ill. Courtesans who attend on the queen shall first cleanse themselves with baths and change into fresh garments. The integrity or otherwise of the queen's personal attendants shall be ascertained by old men over 80 years of age or old women over 50, pretending to be a parent of some other servant, retired servants or eunuchs. These supervisors shall do their duties in the interests of the king. Another mention of eunuchs. Let me mark this. This will be used to debate commie LGBTQ rights activists, that there was so much employment for eunuchs and in the highest quarters with the king. Now, how to be careful of their princes, not princess, princes, in plural of prince. As regards princes, there are a variety of opinions. Now, citations to different rishis. For example, Rishi Bharadwaja says, princes, like crabs, eat their begetters. A king should therefore guard himself against them right from their birth. It is better to kill them quietly if they are found wanting in affection. If it is better to kill them quietly, अगर उनमें दिखता है कि उनमें affection की कमी है खुद के बेटे में, तो मार डालो. Killing is cruel, says Vishalaksha. An innocent one may be killed by mistake. That is why I am against death sentences usually. It is better to keep them under guard in one place, rather than destroy a Kshatriya. After all, the prince is a Kshatriya. This is like nurturing a viper, says the followers of Parasara, another famous rishi. A confined prince would think that his father had done so out of fear and try to bring his father under his influence. Better send him off to a frontier fort. कोई अलग जगह भेज दो बॉर्डर एरिया में, अगर कोई डाउट है उस पर. Pisuna says, this is like dragging away a fighting ram which will only rush back. Knowing why he had been sent off, a prince might make an alliance with a... So all these rishis, all these citations are already agreeing and disagreeing with other rishis themselves. Chanakya hasn't even entered the fold now. Entered with his own opinions yet. So Pishuna says, this is like dragging away a fighting ram. रैम को यहाँ से पकड़ा और फिर छोड़ा, जो कि बाउंस करके फिर खुद के पास ही आएगा. A fighting ram which will only rush back. Knowing why he had been sent off, the prince, to the frontier border fort, a prince might make an alliance with a frontier chief against his father. Better to let him spend his time in the fort of another king, far from the king's own territory. Now, Kaunapadanta says on this topic, this is like giving a calf as a hostage. The king to whom the prince is entrusted will surely start milking the father. Better send the prince to live with his mother's kinsmen, mother's family members, that is. That surely raises the rallying flag, says Vatavyadhi. Vatavyadhi, on this topic, on what Kaunapadanta said, Vatavyadhi says, that surely raises the rallying flag. His relations are certain to go on importuning on behalf of the prince. Better let him be free to dissipate himself, because a son engrossed in pleasures does not hate his father. तो उसको मम्मी के relatives के पास मत भेजो. Kautilya totally disagrees. This, to treat a prince with suspicion from the moment of his birth, is living death, according to Kautilya. This is interesting. This seems more sensible. A royal family with undisciplined princes will collapse under attack like a worm-eaten piece of wood. One should take every possible precaution against a prince turning against his father. Therefore, when the queen is ready to conceive, priests should make the necessary oblations to Indra and Brihaspati. When she is pregnant, her health shall be protected by specialist physicians so that she delivers safely. After the birth, the priests shall perform the necessary purificatory rituals. When the prince is of the right age, he should be trained by experts. Some teachers say that even after all these safeguards, the loyalty of a prince should be tested. For example, the school of Ambi के जितने उनके थॉट्स के जो फॉलोअर्स हैं, वो बिलीव करते हैं, वो रेकमेंड करते हैं दैट सीक्रेट एजेंट्स शुड टेम्प्ट द प्रिंस विथ हंटिंग, गैम्बलिंग, वाइन एंड वुमेन. Secret agents should tempt the prince. They should test him by calling him, by asking him to go to hunting, gambling, wine and women, without the prince ever knowing that they are secret agents of his own father, obviously, and then suggest to him that he sees the kingdom. हटा दो बाप को, ये सब बोलेंगे वो लोग, to test him. This sounds like a very good idea. Other secret agents should try to dissuade him. Okay, कुछ secret agent बोलेंगे नहीं ऐसा मत करो, कुछ secret agent बोलेंगे कि चलो करते हैं ऐसा, and then उससे हम टेस्ट करेंगे कि प्रिंस कैसा आदमी है. There can be no greater crime or sin, says Kautilya. There can be no greater crime or sin than making wicked impressions on an innocent mind. Just as a clean object is stained with whatever is smeared on it, so a prince with a fresh mind understands that truth as the truth, whatever is taught to him. Therefore, a prince should be taught what is true dharma and artha, not what is unrighteous and materially harmful. Instead of tempting the prince with harmful suggestions, secret agents should guard him while declaring their loyalty to him. If in the exuberance of youth he were to cast his eyes towards the wives of others, the friendly agents should make him terrified by arranging for unclean women posing as highborn to meet him in lonely houses at night. If he were to be tempted by wine, then they should turn him off by giving him drugged liquor. If tempted by gambling, fraudulent gamblers should create an aversion. If tempted by hunting, he should be frightened by agents disguised as highway robbers. If he seems to turn his mind against his father, secret agents should first win his confidence by seeming to agree with him and then dissuade him from attacking the king. They should tell him that if he fails in the attempt, he should be killed, but if he succeeds, he would be condemned to hell for the sin of patricide, that is, killing his own father. So they are saying that just don't just be suspicious of that young kid or young prince. Train him, teach him the rights and wrongs, even with these crazy and kind of creepy methods that send secret agents, motivate him to do bad things, but then convince him that, see, no, this is why it's wrong to do this, so that it gets into his head forever. It's stamped in his mind that no, these things should never be done. They should tell him that if he fails in the attempt, he should be killed, even if he succeeds in killing his father. And even if he succeeds, he would be condemned to hell for the sin of patricide. There will also be great anger among the people who will break him like a clod of earth. लोगों को ही तो गुस्सा आ जाएगा, राजा को काहे मार दिया. The punishments for offences against the king and royal property: riding a royal chariot, horse or elephant. If you're not a king and if you end up riding a royal chariot, horse or elephant, cutting off of a hand and a foot, cutting off of a hand or a foot and a foot, एक हाथ और एक foot काट दिया जाएगा, or a fine of 700 pund. And the punishment for reviling the king, spreading false rumors about the king, tongue pulled out. Punishment for stealing or killing a royal elephant or horse. Okay, all commies' tongues would be pulled out in India if Chanakya was here. Stealing or killing a royal elephant or horse, stealing a royal chariot, death by impaling. Having sexual intercourse with the queen, boiled alive. Boiled alive. Okay guys, let's stop here today. We did a whole lot of Arthashastra today because there were less questions today. So if someone's watching this later on, they will not be able to follow if I do too much of it in one day. We already did about more than 1.5 hours, right? So see you on Monday night. On Monday night, we'll discuss the Manusmriti in the live stream. And I'm looking forward to doing the history of Indian philosophy as well. I already ordered the book from the donation given by Abhinag yesterday. And we'll discuss that on Wednesday and Thursday. We'll do it on Wednesday and Thursday again. And if you want to donate to my UPI ID, you can. The link is given in the YouTube description. So thanks for joining the live stream. See you on Monday night, 12